Okay, so basically, just today, what I wanted to speak about is a very small topic called the meaning of life. So, what? Yeah, it's just it's a minor issue, but it's funny actually when you think about the meaning of life. It's even the ability to think about the meaning of life is a very big thing. Why? Because if you think about in the when people are kind of hungry, they call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So a person first, they need, let's say, food, and they need safety. They need to have a positive self-image. So when a person has these, or the other way around, when a person doesn't have these things, so they're struggling. And so it's a little bit like it says in Tanya from the chapter, I think it's 26 in Tanya, that when a person is basically has anxiety, that you can't really function properly. So when a person's struggling, depending on how big the struggle is, you don't really have space for the bigger questions in life. There's a guy that I know from my shul in Kansas City. So he used to say a very good line. He says, "Why was man created in the Garden of Eden? Everything he needed was there. Because in order to be a man, you have to be in the Garden of Eden. In order to be able to think about um, everything it is that, um, in order to be able to think about the higher things in life, you actually have to not be thinking about the smaller things in life. Now, um, so it doesn't mean that a person doesn't, have to not deal with other things in life. But certainly, we're coming to the times of Mashiach. In Mashiach times, we're literally not going to have to think about anything. And there was a guy, he had a very interesting near-death experience, and he basically saw like his whole future, and he saw till Mashiach and after. And one of the things that he said, he kind of lost what he saw, what would happen after, but he saw up to the times of Mashiach. One of the things that he said, which is happening in the physical world, is that the technology is going to get so strong and so great that basically people are not going to have to work anymore. And we're not very far from that time. So the question is, if what are they going to do, right? And the answer, of course, is because ironically, it's once people don't have anything to do, once that's when a new question comes up into life, and that is, what is the meaning, what is the purpose of life? So ironically, not having what to do is a good and a bad thing. On one hand, takes a it creates a question, but only in that question can you have the answer. The Rebbe says that Hashem made it that in our generation, we would come to Him with love, and that means that a person could be thinking about this question. They're thinking about, okay, what is the meaning of the purpose of life? And because of the question itself, they'll come to an answer. Because a person can only have an answer to a question that they're asking, right? So if a guy doesn't care about how to build a building, he'll never figure out how to build a building. And there are millions of different, very, very sophisticated technologies and ways of life that people. This one guy, he made literally a massive living because I don't know where he was in the army, and he figured out how to clean the floors better. And then he came and he made a company, and because his cleaners could clean the floors better, he made a lot of money. But there's a whole field, cleaning. There's another field, I don't know, writing books, and there's another field, a journalist, another field, and there are thousands of different fields. And every single field, a person really has to, they could learn all about this field, but you're only going to get the answers to how to do it is if you're asking the question and you want to do it in the first place. So Hashem made us such a world that we should kind of live in such a world that we would feel what they call existential pain. We would feel that there's something missing, right? Everybody's become religious. Most of us around the table here fall into that category. We didn't just randomly become religious, right? We're born into a world that was somewhat functional, and we're looking for the truth. And the truth led us to Hashem, and then it becomes an infinite journey. So, ironically, there's a very important teaching of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says like this. He says that Hashem has many pleasures. Often we think about Hashem, we say, okay, why did He make the world? And we come up with one good reason. I don't know. His reason is Dira b'tachtain. He wanted to dwell down here, or whatever the reason. Let's say Chafetz Chesed. He wanted to do good. But the truth of the matter is that what if there are many reasons, right? If a person doesn't come to somebody's Shabbos table and they say, okay, I've got the best fish in the world. I got, I don't know, chicken soup. Very nice. Chicken soup is very nice, but there's a chicken soup, and then there's fish, and then there's kugel, and then there's fleisch, and there's challah, and each thing is delicious in its own way. So, in the same way, there can be many, many reasons to creation. It doesn't have to be one exact reason. And so, but a couple of things stand out very, very clearly. And the first is that, as we said it before, that the Rebbe brings us down. The real reason for creation is basically Hashem loves us. There's an unconditional love that Hashem has for each and every one of us, and it's from that place of love that He makes everything else. Just like if you have a child, you build a beautiful house and you do all these many different things, but the fundamental factor, the fundamental reason that motivates the entire thing is love. Okay. Now the next question is, so now what? Okay, we're here. Let's say you're in Gan Eden. You have everything you need. Now what do you do? What's the point of life? And so we find that it says that the stories of our avos, of our ancestors, is simun labanim. They are like an instruction to the children. So the Torah, of course, the first book of the Torah, the book of Bereshis, is mainly stories. In the book of Shmos, we already get a lot of halachas. Right now we're coming into Mishpatim, which is all the Jewish laws. But basically, the first book of the Torah is almost completely stories, and it's only from the second book of the Torah that you get the laws of the Torah. So these stories, of course, are not just regular stories. They're paradigms. They're very, very important lessons in life. And what these stories are teaching us are basically how to live life. And so the first story, which is the story of basically man in the Garden of Eden, is telling us exactly what we need to know to live life. And the first thing that Hashem does is He says, listen, you're a gardener. I made a beautiful garden, and your job is to be a gardener. So what does that mean practically? It says, la'ovda u'lashamra, right? And Rashi explains, what does that mean? It means lasakin, to make it better. There was a doctor who once came to the Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe that the Rebbe was very into preventative health. Preventative health is we have to eat healthy. We have to, it's very, 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 very important. The CDC shows 70% of major illnesses are preventable. All studies show this. Like eating healthy makes a very big difference. Yisrael, I just remembered you were speaking about that guy that ate too healthy. So there was a guy, I think his name was Meir Abu Chatzera. He was very into a macrobiotic diet or something. But he actually said it's not good to only eat healthy. Like, you have to have a little bit of poison once in a while or something. So so in any event, the point is that um, the 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 Rebbe told this doctor, he says, you have to teach people to eat healthy, like prevent disease. So the doctor said, what, you want me to make the heart better than Hashem made it? So the Rebbe says something very, very profound to him. He says, yeah, that's the whole goal of the world. Because Hashem made a world, and our job is to make it better. So once we understand that, we begin to understand what we're doing here, what is the meaning of life. The meaning of life is making it better. And you find it very clearly with a Jewish person, because of course the Jew has a very powerful responsibility to Hashem, and he's been giving this. In fact, the Rebbe says that basically major changes in the world happen through Jews. And if you look at it, major thought process changes, most major changes in the world came directly from Jewish people. So Hashem has given us a unique gift and a unique ability to change the world. And so what does it take to make the world better? So number one, you have to care. Because if you don't care, like we said before, if you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. So the second thing is that a person has to also see themselves as a gardener in Hashem's garden. In other words, it's very easy to look at life either to follow, right? Most people, either they're following or they're saying, okay, how do I survive? How do I get the best out of it for me, right? But to say that, no, actually, I have to make it better is a very special way of looking at life. That I'm a gardener in Hashem's garden, and my job is to make the garden a more beautiful garden. And once we look at life in that way, suddenly all of our problems disappear. Because, I mean, obviously, if we don't have more fundamental problems, but existential problems. Why? Because you understand what is your role in this world. Your role is to make it better. There's a famous story with my grandfather that there was a man, I think it was from Brazil, he needed an urgent answer from the Rebbe. And my grandfather had this little note that he wrote and he put it in the door by the Rebbe because he was hoping that the Rebbe would, sorry, that the secretary, he thought the secretary was in the door, the secretary would come out, he'd see the note, he'd take it to the Rebbe. So the happened that the note fell down, and the Rebbe had to bend down and pick up the note. So, so my grandfather wrote an apology letter to the Rebbe saying, "I apologize, you had to bend down to pick up the note." So the Rebbe wrote back a very, very, very profound answer. He said, "Haloizu kol matarasi." Is this not my entire purpose in life? To ufheben, to uplift, and especially those things that other people have overlooked. So, in other words, the job, the Rebbe himself is saying about his own job is to uplift, and especially those things that other people overlook. So, the things that we see are problems, as the Rebbe says, if you see a problem, everything comes from Hashem. So, if Hashem showed you a problem, it's there because He wants you to see a solution. He wants you to say, okay, well, here's a solution to this problem. So, in other words, a person has to very much realize that they are Hashem's gardener, and Hashem is helping them tend to His garden. There was a Jew who once came to the Rebbe, very interesting guy, and the Rebbe helped him out. And then afterwards, it's an interesting case, but he gave the Rebbe a kiss, and he said, "Rebbe, I don't know how I can thank you." So the Rebbe said, or he said something like, "There's no way I can thank you." The Rebbe says, "Yes, you can thank me. You can help your fellow Jew." So the Rebbe has a job. He's like the chief gardener, but he can't do it all on his own. He can't reach every Jew on his own. He needs each one of us to be a gardener as well, to reach the fellow Jew, to really do what we can to reach out. So, any questions on that? Yisrael, any questions? Sounded good? Okay, fine. Okay, so that's the Vart. We're all gardeners, and there's a big garden, and we have some missions. And of course, the main thing is Lasakin to make it better. We're here to always make things better. And once we know that, we know the direction of life. You know, sometimes people get into negative directions. They think it's all about cutting the weeds. It's not about cutting the weeds. It's about making the garden beautiful. L'chaim v'levracha.